Hi, this is Akhila. I worked in the Indian music industry all my life in varying capacities across music streaming, indie label, music marketing, and brand partnerships. You may also know me as the co host of the Indian Music Charts podcast, but that's not what you're listening to right now.
And I'm Roochay, a music marketer since the past 10 years, primarily focusing on international as well as Indian artists to break borders in India and outside India. And you're in fact listening to The Evolution of South Asian Music, a special two-part podcast series recorded live at this year's South by Southwest Sydney.
In this series, we are exploring how South Asian music is evolving, not just in the region, but across global stages.
In part 1, we'll dive into what South Asian music sounds like today, who the key players are, and how the listener landscape is shifting.
Joining us is Jade Nazareth, an artist manager with decade of experience across London, LA, and Sydney, having worked with iconic musicians like Paul McCartney, Arcade Fire, FKA Twigs, and many more. Now based in Sydney, she manages a growing roster of emerging artists, including Matthew Ifield, who found his biggest fan base right here in India.
And Jashima, the founder of Ode, a multicultural marketing and talent agency shaping how South Asian voices are heard worldwide. With a background in journalism, consumer psychology, and events, she builds strategic ecosystems that focus on underrepresented creatives.
Further ado, let's get into the episode.
And this is the evolution of South Asian music. So we'll deep dive into the topic and we will touch upon various aspects of it. But such a great conversation this is. And we cannot wait to deep dive into it. Just laying a few context here for everyone's understanding. When we talk about South Asia, it is literally 25% of the world. And why I say that? Because in total, we are talking about not just one territory, but like 7 territories. And I'll give it to Akhila in a minute on this. But in terms of just pure numbers, this is currently sitting at 2.04 billion people in the world, out of which 1.4 billion people are in India. Ever since last year, where we've become the number 1 country in terms of population. Whoop, whoop. And we will continue doing so for the next at least 25, 30 years, as in when the younger dynamic population of India tries and overtakes the digital economy. Because the youngest median, and the actual median age in India is currently 28 to 29. Also laying down further context here that when we talk about diaspora, the Indian diaspora, it's the biggest diaspora in the world. It's currently sitting at 35 to 36 million, out of which the largest one sits in US at close to 9.5 million people. You have UK, Canada, Australia. Because we are in the land of Australia, just to give further more context, Indians are the fastest moving immigrants here. Second biggest, right after UK. At the moment, we have 1 million people in Australia itself, out of which almost 122,000 people in terms of students are taking university courses, college courses year after year. And in the next 5 years, India will overtake UK as becoming the biggest immigrant or kind of a migration market into the land. Sydney and Melbourne sits on the top of it with almost 100,000 families sitting in Sydney and 150,000 in Melbourne. So this is a really kind of a big shift that we are seeing over the last 5 years of it. And Akhila, on a global lens, right? When we talk about South Asian music, like how would you define or rather lay a historic context?
Firstly, like we've discussed this. This is like literally a PhD level topic that we're trying to cover in 45-ish minutes, and I'm going to address this from the perspective of someone who lives in the market, right? And with something like this, I prefer giving a black or white answer. When we say South Asian music, what we're really referring to is a huge body of work across languages and genres. For the purpose of this conversation, we are focusing on India specifically, but South Asia generally refers to the entire subcontinent, which includes Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. Because almost 90 to 95% of South Asian revenue in the music industry comes from India, we're going to kind of focus on that. And so what does South Asian music consist of today, right?
Yeah.
Huge body of work. I would start off with maybe the most obvious, which is film music. People often associate India with Bollywood, but it's just a segment of film music. It's about 50% of the overall film ecosystem. I think as of 2024, it draws about 4,700 crores, which is about Australian dollars 800 to 900 million. There's also the big four in the south. So that's 4 different languages. So that's Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and Kannada. And these 4 put together, they also draw in somewhere about 4,000 to 4,500 crores rupees, which is about 750 to 820 million AUD. And Telugu itself from that is about 430 million. And the rest would be about 322 million from Tamil. So the other 2 markets are like a lot smaller. But this is the film ecosystem. This may be what a lot of people are aware of when you think of India. But that's not all that is South Asian music. Like there's also OG South Asian music, which is, classical, which is Carnatic and Hindustani and folk. Huge part of the music culture, right? Like actually, I don't know how many states we have right now. Is it 28?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because sometimes we make new states. And each state has its own language and it has its own folk tradition. And like even today from an independent artist perspective, it is one of the top genres that independent artists are releasing in. And they actually tend to release 4x more than any other genre, which is interesting data that we've been seeing on the TuneCore side. Of course, there's devotional, which is a very big part of the music that comes out of this region. And then there is the non-film side of it, which we've been trying to coin names around it. I think iPop is doing the rounds, but essentially this is everything that's sitting outside of the film ecosystem. A lot of it is independent, a lot of it is just called independent music, but it is being released by major labels, so gray area over there. Here there's both a language as well as a genre bifurcation. So the top languages would be Hindi, Punjabi, Tamil, English also, by the way. Again, like from a TuneCore perspective, it's the second language, by the way, second topmost language in which Indian artists are releasing music in. And
is that only India or?
Only in India, English is the number 2 language for independent music specifically. So you don't often think about English music as South Asian music, but when you think about it as a person of South Asian origin or an Indian origin releasing the music, it is still very much in that caveat, right? And of course, from a genre bifurcation, like hip hop is big, you have pop and electronic, but I think a lot of classification on the India side happens at a language level. So even your programming on streaming services is more by selecting your language. So that's the perspective of someone who lives in the country, but maybe we want to get like more
So
perspectives on this.
We'll get onto little genres and the rise of the non-film in the next one, and we would love to hear you, Akhila, on that. To further add what you said about the languages part, I think that's the most exciting right now, where the regional growth in India is massive. India officially claims 22 languages, including English, and there are 900 plus dialects. So every 100 kilometers as we go in India, we always say that the language and the dialect changes. And that has been the growth of it in the last 5 years, all the more right from the pandemic shift. But now let's hear from people outside who have been also working closely into the South Asian space. And Jade, actually, I want to really bring you in first. As an Australian, right, what was your sort of first perception of, South Asian music? Right?
Yeah.
And what according to you, actually, it just means here?
I think it's an interesting one. I think I actually am the daughter of a South Asian immigrant who came to Australia in the 70s. And it's interesting because even with that heritage that I have, I think my first, when I think about South Asian music is film music. It's Bollywood, But I also think that was because my dad came here in a time when there was a lot of assimilation expected from migrants into the Australian culture. And now we see a lot more acceptance of people in their backgrounds in Australia, and that's opened up this conversation to think about things from a multi-level kind of experience. So it's not all just focused on the Bollywood. You know, we are seeing now that there's a lot of contemporary Indian music coming into play, and people are accepting that. You know, we're seeing, you know, Indian artists playing festivals, like Coachella, and we're getting exposure to that here as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not surprising, right, to us Indians that
Yeah.
Bollywood is the entry
I
point here.
think, yeah, I mean, Dil Chahta was shot here in Sydney, like such an iconic movie. And I think, like, there was this whole array of Bollywood movies that were actually shot in Australia in the 2000s. And that was actually, like, because a lot of business moved from Europe to Australia from a film production point of view. So it was actually a federal program. It's called the Australian Screen Production Incentive. So if a production has a minimum value of 20 million AUD, and they're bringing in obviously like business into the country and they're meeting all local employment criteria, they get a lot of tax breaks. And that was one of the reasons why we see in 2000s a lot of movies being shot here. Dil Chahta, like I said, was shot here. Salam Namaste was shot in Melbourne, some parts here as well. Chakdi had some scenes also shot.
Did
over
you
here.
have your Tanhai moment at the
I did,
Harbour
actually.
Opera House?
I did, but the thing is, I kept laughing at how funny I think I am. So I didn't look sad at all. And like, quick context, Tanhai means like lonely. And there's this song called Tanhai where Amir Khan is walking through Harbour Bridge and he's outside of the Opera House being sad AF because whatever reason, man, like he's dating someone or he wants someone he can't get, which is classic, right? And here I'm like, he, Instagram content. So, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, there's been a deep connection with Australia on the film side, but also I would say beyond that, because we've had Australian artists who...
It was actually a very
Collaborated.
interesting time as the phase that you said about the 2000s, right? Particularly in 2009, when Kylie Minogue actually collaborated on the Akshay Kumar film with the Bollywood playback singer Sonu Nigam on a song called Chiggy Wiggy.
Yeah.
And it was way, way back in time, right? And she also featured in the music video, which was also part of the film. And so for us, an introduction of having an Australian pop icon like Kylie and really paying attention to the market in the film was really opening doors to us into the market and then leading to all the shoots happening here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that led to 2011 when Akon came in and collaborated on the Shah Rukh Khan film,
Yeah.
Ravan's.
Honestly, at one point, we all thought he lived in India because he was just constantly there.
Probably he
all the
might
time.
because he's coming back
I
again
couldn't
later
get
this
over
year.
how popular he was there when I
I know. It's like you always have that one artist who's just randomly very big in Japan and like very big in India. Akon's definitely one of them.
Massive.
But yeah, we're very happy to have him.
Akon and Diplo definitely have
Yeah.
an India
Diplo lives in
affinity.
Bandra. Like I am pretty sure he lives. He has a house like next
And
to
he's,
Shah Rukh.
and he's playing gully cricket right in the below the building, right? Every day.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, Roochay, I want to also ask you. Of course, we've spoken about the connection between India and Australia. That there is so much music that can be considered South Asian music, being developed in India, being developed in the diaspora. There's a lot of listening also that's happening, right? Like Indians listen to, I think this is the IFPI report, which says that 24.4 hours per week. And the global average is 20.7. So Indians listen to more music than most people. For YouTube, India is the number one market. They have like 450 million users, right? And like even in terms of streaming volume, India is actually number two. Like 14% of all streams happening in the world happen out of India. So it's second only to the US. Why are Indians listening to so much music?
I'm glad you asked, Akhila. And that's probably the most interesting part of the growth journey of India, I would say, in the last 5 years. Ever since you heard the term Jio, which is the biggest telecom in the country, and the Jio boom happened in 2016, particularly, tail end of 2015, 2016, and internet was made free, completely for Indians, and that changed the game. What it led to was us having an access to the cheapest ever data in the world. So we don't really pay particularly for consuming internet. We just pay for telecom. And that got us all hooked onto the phones. At the same time, as soon as internet became accessible, there was a smartphone penetration happening. Currently, we are almost like 700 to 800 million smartphone users out of the 1.4 billion, which means that by the end of this year or probably next year will be 900 million. A lot of people will be holding the smartphones for the very first time. And when they do that, it's going to be their own independent TV, what we call it, or an independent screen. We have skipped the generation of a television era where an audience of living room sitting with a family and consuming a television moves to a bedroom television and then moves to a mobile screen. I don't think the bedroom television era happened for the entire country. It probably only happened for some of them in the metros. And once you have the screen on board, it means that it's going to be your own personalized way of consuming things. And the data around that is absolutely berserk because 25, 26 hours of consuming just literally and listening to music, as Akhila said, per week is a massive number, more than a normal average of 20 hours. Secondly, internet consumption in terms of the Indian space is roughly consuming 24.5 GB per user, which is also way beyond what US consumes at 22 GB and what China consumes at 20 GB. So we're also consuming more internet, we're also consuming more hours of it, and that's leading to more and more consumption in generally, and that's just going to keep increasing. We'll dive deep into like the data aspects of it, but I would love to bring in Jashima here and actually have our understanding and observation on how diaspora or global audiences relate to South Asian music when it comes to Bollywood and beyond, right? Like, I mean, you've been working very closely with in US, in Canada, which are probably our two biggest diaspora markets. You've seen the shift happening across languages and genres that Akhila also spoke about. What's happening actually in those markets?
Yeah, there's a structural, which is what you and Akhila have explained with the various consumption data points, the regions, the languages. And then there's cultural. So every country in the diaspora has its own set of migration patterns, the years most South Asians came, how they came. There's blue-collar opportunities, there's white-collar jobs, there's academic routes people took to spreading in Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Canada, the US. But what started to happen in the last 10 years that's very interesting is what is South Asianness? Plays a lot in music. How do you even begin to describe that? Really, the term South Asian started populating a few years ago when the US Census.
I would love to actually ask, like when the internationals ask you, you might be getting this question all the more
Every day.
probably in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
How would you define that?
I think that there's a sentiment of when you say South Asian, you're really just saying Indian. And what do you mean by that? And for me, it's the answer Akhila gave, which is it's a set of countries whose residents make music. Sonically, I can't tell you what South Asian music sounds like. That's implicit individual bias, right? So when someone looks at me or you read my bio, you go, oh, she's Punjabi. And I have to tell people all the time that Punjabi is a language. There could be Punjabi R&B, there could be Punjabi hip-hop, there could be folk music. Tamil is a language, right? We represent a Tamil artist in Toronto that makes rock music. And every time anyone hears her music, they're like, what is that? And so are those South Asian music? Is it South Asian music when Ravina Arora or MIA sing in English? Is that South Asian music? So yeah, I think migration patterns affect dramatically what your sense of being South Asian is. And in this case, specific to India, many people that live abroad spent time being closer to their language and their religion and region, right? Because they're so far away from home, the way to keep those things alive. So for a lot of us, growing up, Bollywood wasn't our first reference, or it was our first reference. Maybe the movie was the first reference, but you're singing regional songs at home. If you're Punjabi, it's like Bolniya Tappe, Sitniya at weddings. If you're Gujarati, it might be going to Garba in the middle of Arizona or in Philadelphia, right? So yeah, I think the structural part of consumption has democratized the regional and cultural movement patterns that have existed in the diaspora for 3 to 4 generations now.
And with so much growth happening, especially in India, right? How does that impact the Indian diaspora outside, the South Asians outside? Like, is it, what I'm trying to say is it really going genre to genre similar to what the growth of the country is? And would you see that same happening outside as well?
Indians are doing really well in India and outside of India. But I don't think we're growing as rapidly as Indians within India are growing because the Indian market in entertainment spends significantly more than other entertainment markets. So you'll find often that artists are considered Indian, whether their nationality is something else or not. They're not considered as a part of that larger mainstream music ecosystem in any country. So things like this is great because it creates a corridor of legitimacy in a sense. But at large, Indians around the world are growing. Can I say the subcontinent and the diaspora are marking at the same numeric growth? Maybe in certain categories, but it's also a population difference.
Wow. More power to you on what you're doing there. Jade, where does really India stand for Matthew Ifield? And especially you've had a really first-hand experience at the moment. Tell us about your experience and how was that journey of really linking into the country?
Yeah, I think that this is, obviously, we're in Australia, so there's some Australian artists here, so this is some context for breaking into that market. We actually came to your talk last South by, which set the alarm bells for me about like digging in deeper and looking at India as a territory for Matthew. And we had just had a cover out and we were seeing that it was resonating with people on the ground in India. We hadn't done anything on YouTube at that point. We had just released it as a cover on Spotify. And we could see it kind of climbing up the ranks there, India all of a sudden coming into the top 10 and then going up to number 8 and stuff like that. So I think you said something in that initial conversation about Indians not only listen to music, but they watch music. And that kind of set us down this path. Okay, we're going to make a music video for this. It's going to be, very simple, but it's going to be very colourful. And we're going to see if that resonates with people in that territory. And obviously, YouTube is a massive streaming platform in India as well. So we targeted, we saw some growth. Then we ended up going on tour there. We met Skillbox. We brought in from Skillbox. We did a tour there. It's now his biggest market across all platforms, and not by an insignificant amount. It's by 2 or 3 times more than number 2. And
Are you talking about Spotify, YouTube?
Both. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And that was really, I think, one, because there's a huge market there and we were leaning into a couple of things that were resonating, but also we were finding great people to partner with as well. So we did a lot of research before we went into market about artists that kind of sat in the same field as Matthew, had similar audiences as well, and we made sure to lean into those things. So we did that before we even got on ground, and then when we were on ground as well, making sure that we were, Darshan was a great collab that came out. It was fun. It had people in India talking about it. Yeah, it was those kind of cultural things that we just lent into.
And this was actually first sort of like your debut.
Is this
tour?
His first ever international tour was into India. Yeah.
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Congratulations to you.
Thanks.
And to Skillbox, and big ups Royden for linking the new entrants into the market. Actually, on that note, Jashima, right? If this is what the entry point to India is, how should an artist who wants to really grow their fan base in the South Asian diasporas, right? How should that really work or approach it in a way?
This is going to blow your mind. The way you would market to any other human being. So if you make rock music or pop music or hip hop music, I would hope that we start to see ourselves as beyond the way the West understands our ethnicities and apply that to marketing as well. If an artist is going to market in India, they should do what Jade did, which is partner with Indians in India that do this professionally and do research on those markets and how to be intelligent there and how to A&R the right tracks, bring in the right openers. When you want to go to market in the West, it's like, I would ask you why you want a South Asian audience in the West and how that's different from another listening audience. And if you can answer that question, then the second or third question becomes, okay, great. Are you visually or sonically notably South Asian in a way where that might relate to someone in the diaspora? Or are you present and active in the genres and spaces the music you make exists, right? For example, when Hanuman Kind dropped Big Dogs, it did an entire press run with general hip-hop publications before specific to South Asian diaspora music blogs were granted access to covering it. And that makes sense. Because if you're South Asian and you live abroad, you love hip-hop. If you're South Asian, you live in South Asia and you love hip-hop, you're reading Pigeons and Planes. audience.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for that to be your point of discovery. And then if a third-party platform in the diaspora that caters towards an ethnic group or nationality is like, it is so cool that he happens to be Indian.
And that's a wrap on part 1 of the evolution of South Asian music, recorded live at South by Southwest Sydney.
Part 2, we'll dig deeper into the business of it all, how music charts and on-ground realities differ in India, what the live scene actually looks like,
And why India is becoming an export market for international music, the opportunities it holds, and a realistic look at its challenges.
So stay tuned, there's a lot more to uncover about how this landscape is evolving.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in part 2.